So ultimately I've determined that my phono stage, this guy right here, has given up the ghost. Not really happy with it. I think that one of the capacitors might be gone in it. I could probably ship it back to Bellari, the manufacturer, to see if I can't get it repaired, but I'm trying to weigh if I really want to do that or go with a different phono stage. Ultimately, I kind of like to go to a phono stage that can do moving coil cartridges, just because with a moving coil cartridge, if it's well done, you have the ability to extract more detail, because a lot of the cartridges, the way they're manufactured, you can extract more information from the groove. But I'll get into that another time. So I spent some time, I got a little bit of time last weekend after the in-laws went home back to Russia to troubleshoot my phono preamp. But before I get into that, there are a couple things that I've been listening to digitally that I also have on vinyl, and I just kind of like to talk about those quickly. So the first one I'd like to show is the Swans. Now this guy has been shown in the VC here a little bit. I just saw Fred Big Star show this, and all the accolades that this thing has been getting is really well deserved. I'm really late to the party on this one. So I had heard of the Swans, but I never bothered to sample their music until this guy. I found out the Swans have actually been around for a long time, and I'm going to have to sample some of their back catalog based on this album. So this album, To Be Kind, is really hard to describe. It is unique. There's nothing out there today that can really do justice to say, hey, it's like this album, or it's like this piece of music. This is totally unique. But to say up front, it can be a challenging listen. A lot of the songs are like 12 minutes in length. There's some preformed jams. There's some songs where, yeah, you got a dedicated rhythm, but you got instruments doing other things. My best way to attempt to describe it is, if you know some of David Lynch's films and music, if you're into that kind of thing, if you like weird and twisted vocals like Captain Beefheart and Tom Waits, with long improvised jams, which is kind of like the Doors, The End, yeah, check this guy out. One of the songs that's really been resonating with me now is a song that was dedicated to Chester Burnett, who is also known as Howlin' Wolf. Famous blues musician. He's one of the best on the chess label. That song is fantastic. It really, there are elements of it that remind me of the Doors. This is The End. The lyrics, at least my interpretation of it, is about growing up out of childhood. And the singer is a big fan of Howlin' Wolf and his vocal style, which is a little bit gravelly. He does his best to bring out that inner Howlin' Wolf. That is one that I recommend sampling if you can, to see if you're interested in picking up this album. You know what's great? When you're playing it and your daughter kind of perks her head and I was like, what's that? And your wife comes down and she yells at you, we need to talk about your choice of music. That's when you know it's good rock and roll. The next thing that I've been listening to quite a bit lately, at least this past week, when I was troubleshooting my phono preamp, was this guy here, the soundtrack to La Dolce Vita. The reason why I'm listening to it is this lady, Anita Ekberg, passed away at the age of 84 this past weekend. The film is really a product of its times, but I consider it one of Fellini's best. This scene in the film with her, she's very voluptuous, Swedish blonde. She actually did a lot of films here in America as well. It is analogous to some of Marilyn Monroe's classic scenes. I almost said Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Monroe's classic scenes. So if you haven't caught it, you know, check it out. It's really not a bad movie, but it is to some people a little bit dated. But I consider it one of Fellini's best. And Fellini collaborated quite a bit with Nino Rota. And again, seeing a number of Fellini's films, I really thought this is one of Nino Rota's best soundtracks. So this is on the S stamper. It's came out in the early 60s, I want to say, maybe 59, 60. It's on nice heavyweight vinyl, put out by RCA Victor on the international label. This one I happened to pick up at Amoeba Records online, and right now they're running a 15% off sale on everything. And normally what I do is I wait until they have their 15% sale, and then, yeah, I go through their website and see if they have a lot of great stuff. And personally, I have never been disappointed with anything that I've gotten from Amoeba online. They rate everything as VG plus or sealed. Yeah, but you know, I've had albums that have come near me. I have never gotten an album from Amoeba online that has been scratched, beaten to hell. Everything that I've gotten from Amoeba online has been great. Now, to talk about troubleshooting my phono stage. So, at first, I thought, hey, it could potentially be the needle that's going. If you think your needle is going, I mean, a lot of things that you'll read online is needles are only good for about 1,000 hours. I knew I wasn't at that with my needle, so I was a little bit concerned. But if you think your needle is going, stop playing good records, or records you don't want to destroy, because a damaged needle can ruin your records. So I'm like, okay, what is going to be my sacrificial lamb? And so my sacrificial lamb was the single by Sonique, which is Sky, which is a dance pop single that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. I actually like the album version much better than these remixed versions, but this was $1. And so I put this on, and I still was not getting any bass frequency. And I know that this song, it's a dance song, you gotta have some bass, you gotta have something to get the people dancing. And for $1, I'm like, okay, if it gets screwed up, no loss. So I took my RCA leads from my Riga, which I had shown in previous videos, and I put them right into my Marantz Phono section. I'm happy my Marantz Phono, and the bass came right back. So that clued me into, hey, you know, it is not my needle, because if my Marantz is doing fine, there's no distortion, then the needle's good. So what did I do next? Next thing I did was rolled the tube out, and so I put on another album that I knew had a lot of bass, so I thought the problem was with the tube. And the album that I want to pick, that I started out with, was actually featured by Armin, and it's Massive Attack's Mezzanine. This has a lot of bass, so, you know, I figured, hey, okay, tube roll, hopefully it'll pick it up. It was only the tube. Tubes are not that expensive. I mean, you can spend a fortune on tubes, but hey, you know, 14, 19 bucks for a tube, not a big deal. But I put on Mezzanine, and this is just, if you're not familiar with Massive Attack's back catalog, this is the place to start. I think this is their masterpiece. Yeah, a lot of their back catalog is great, but this is their masterpiece. This is well produced, well recorded, like Armin had mentioned in one of his previous videos. I have 2 copies of it. I picked up the 40th anniversary release, and I have an original. And I'm disappointed that this is really limited. In fact, you can't find it now. They should have pressed up more, because I know a lot of people are looking for them. You got to pay through the nose now to get it, and I'm happy I got on board. This one was pressed at Palace, the re-release, on 180 gram vinyl. Very nice. Very simple labels. I mean, some of the bootleg copies that are out there do not get the labels right. They'll have like a big A or B. So that's one thing to look for if you find this album in the used shops, is you got to look for the orange labels. The other thing is, it came with its own printed inners on both the original copy. If you see paper sleeves, it's not an original. So there's a lot of bootleg copies out there, and if there's a lot of bootleg copies out there, then you know there's a demand for the album. So I don't know why Universal made the decision just to cut the pressing, because I think they could have sold a bunch more. But anyways, I rolled the tube, put on Massive Attack, no change whatsoever. So I made a few more tweaks, you know, playing with the ground wire. Some of the other some of the other albums I was playing, This is the soundtrack to Trainspotting. This is not an original. So I picked up what was supposedly a re-release. I think it's legit. I mean, everything that I can see is that it's legit, but I don't have enough information on it. I mean, good heavyweight vinyl on this orange color. The pressing sounds good, at least when I played it originally. I've only been able to spin it a couple of times because I recently picked it up, but I just love the soundtrack from this film. I mean, it features Blur, Damon Albarn from Gorillaz, and Blur, Blur itself, Brian Eno, Left Field, Iggy Pop, Primal Scream. Now the tracks that I picked to troubleshoot the bass were the tracks from Primal Scream and Left Field. I mean, these things are really heavy hitting, so that's why I selected this album. If you haven't seen the film, it's a little bit quirky, but I love it. It's about heroin addicts in Scotland. It was one of Ewan McGregor's first films, but the soundtrack I just fell in love with. I thought the soundtrack played so well into the movie. Now the last thing that I'm going to show you is another single which I use for troubleshooting. I got some video which I'm going to try and incorporate if I can. But one of the singles that I have that has just phenomenal bass is Discopolis by Lifelike and Chris Menace. I'm not sure if they have a full length for this, but this track, Discopolis, is incredible. The video is seductive, erotic, yeah, worth checking out. But I just fell in love with this song, and very generic label. I think it was mastered at MPO, which MPO is, which I found out from Dr. Deadwax a while back, is a mastering lab in France. Don't know where it was pressed. Could be GZ Vinyl. GZ Vinyl is based out of the Czech Republic, and they've actually bought a bunch of new record presses. And I think in terms of production and output, they're probably tops in Europe because they can put out so much product. Problem is that they do not have an analog mastering lab, so they can only do digital. But you know, this sounds good. Hopefully you'll see some of that in the videos. I played with things, but if you haven't heard Lifelike and Chris Menace, particularly this song, check it out. It's a long bass jam, a little bit dark, but it's good. I enjoy it. So if you can, check it out. Just to kind of give you a sample of what I was hearing. So I picked a track that I had both a CD copy of and a vinyl copy of to use as a reference to listen for the bass. Now, it's not 100% spot on, but you know, it gives you a good approximation of what the bass should sound like. See, you feel that the bass is so much weaker going through the Blari. Now I'm going to go back to the CD. So you can feel the bass is more deeper and well-rounded on the CD. And once again, to go back to the Blari, so it's not there. So the problem is definitely with my preamp. Tube roll did nothing for it, so there is something wrong internally with the unit. Okay, you can hear a little bit of the drum going on, and the bass part is going to kick in. So now I'm going to switch back over to the CD version of it.